Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Family drama is messy enough, but what happens when your toxic sibling refuses to respect boundaries even after a judge spells them out? This is the story of one man who finally stood his ground. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. From 5 stars to jail bars, I threw my sister in jail. Technically, she's my half-sister, but for the sake of telling this story, I'll just call her my sister. Labels don't really matter when the relationship's been poisoned for as long as I can remember. For months, I'd been trying to get restraining orders against 3 people: my mother, her husband, and my half-sister. Between years of abuse, manipulation, and harassment, I had more than enough evidence to justify it. To me, it seemed like a clear-cut case. Unfortunately, the judge didn't see it that way and ultimately denied the restraining order. Before we left the courtroom, though, my lawyer asked to put something on the record. He said in front of everyone that while the restraining order itself was denied, I still had all the power. If any of them showed up on my property uninvited, I had the right to call the police immediately and they could be arrested on the spot for trespassing. No warnings, no polite requests to leave, just straight to jail. I told the judge and my lawyer that I understood. Then I turned and looked directly at my mother, her husband, and my sister and said slowly and clearly, "If you show up on my property, I will not ask you to leave or tell you to leave. I'll just call the police. You will be arrested and I will press full charges for trespassing." I meant every word of it. Now some background about my sister. She's spoiled, entitled, and has never faced a real consequence in her life. My parents, especially my mother, poured all their money, attention, and energy into her. She was the chosen one, the golden child. Meanwhile, I was treated as an afterthought at best, a burden at worst. They made sure she had the best of everything: the nicest clothes, the expensive hobbies, the newest gadgets, the college fund. I had to build my own life from scratch. Every achievement I've made is because I've worked for it, not because it was handed to me. And my sister, she still behaves like the world revolves around her because for decades it did. So fast forward to yesterday. I've been in the middle of moving, packing up boxes, sorting through years of my own hard work, when suddenly she shows up at my door, uninvited, unannounced. Exactly what I had warned them not to do. I didn't hesitate. I didn't say a word to her. I picked up my phone, dialed 911, and explained the situation to dispatch. "I have someone trespassing on my property," I said calmly. "I need officers here now." The police arrived quickly. They asked her what was going on, and she immediately tried to play the family card. "He's my brother," she said, all faux sweet, like that excused her behavior. "I just wanted to talk." I looked her dead in the eye and told the officers she has no business being here. I've already made it clear in court that if she set foot on my property, I would press full charges. I want her arrested. And that's exactly what happened. The police cuffed her and took her away. I felt nothing. No guilt, no regret, no second thoughts. The level of hatred I feel for her is dangerous. And I don't say that lightly. She has spent her entire life treating me as less than human, feeding off the control and manipulation that my mother and stepfather allowed her to wield over me. She thrives on making me feel small. But yesterday, she learned that I'm not small anymore. I feel completely justified in what I did. They all knew what the consequences would be if they ever showed up on my property. They were warned directly, publicly, in court. They thought I was bluffing. Turns out I wasn't. And as far as I'm concerned, she found out the hard way that sometimes in life, you really do FAFO. They didn't think you'd really do it, did they? More fool them. Everybody has a limit. It just varies where or what it is. And sometimes that field of jerks is barren AF. And our second story. Simple mistake actually made my vacation better. I traveled to Colorado this past September to attend a wedding with a weeks-long vacation, and I had never been there before. I got mistaken for an employee a couple of times throughout that week, actually. I stayed by the Grand Mesa, but drove to Aspen for one of the days to see the Maroon Bells, like a 2.5-hour drive. The first situation was simple. While making a stop at Walmart, the woman who stopped me said my keys hanging from my belt gave the impression that I worked there. She apologized and we both continued shopping. The second situation was different. I'm finally in Aspen. To get to the Maroon Bells, you park your car, then buy a ticket for a bus ride to get there. I'm waiting for the next bus, which should be there in about 10 minutes. I'm in awe from the scenery. Even the area waiting for the bus was absolutely beautiful, so I'm taking as many pictures as possible. I noticed an older man in his 70s probably kind of watching me. I ignored it because I know some people just stare sometimes. OG, old guy. He walks up to me and asks, "Don't have enough pictures already?" Me, "Oh no, there's never enough." And I chuckle a bit. OG, "So how long until the next bus?" Me, looks at the time. Should be about 6 minutes or so if it's on schedule. OG, "Is it on schedule?" Man, you'd think you'd seen enough of this already to not take so many pictures. Me, "I think it's on schedule, though I've never been here before. I'm on vacation." OG looked super surprised and starts smiling and laughing, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you worked here." He points to my keys that I keep hanging on my belt loop. I thought those were like employee keys. We actually start chatting for a while. He was very nice, asked each other where we were from, because he was also on vacation. I told him Ohio, and he told me Florida. He actually lives pretty close to my grandmother, and we talked about that area. He asks me where else I've been in Colorado for my vacation. I told him about the wedding and about the little Book Cliffs area to see wild horses, and he was so excited to see the pictures and videos I got of some horses. He told me it's harder to see them around that time, and he didn't get to see any when he went. He then introduced me to his wife, and I ended up sitting next to her on the bus, and we talked about Colorado and Florida on the way, both amazed looking at the scenery out of the window. When we made it to the Maroon Bells, we parted ways. I reached the area where you can see the full peak of the mountains. I can see the old guy looking around. He finally sees me, waves while yelling, "Hey, Ohio, what do you think of that?" I gave him a thumbs up and yelled back, "It's beautiful." That's one of the best experiences I've had with a stranger. Also, is there a thing about a key ring from the belt loop meaning employee? And our next story. Karen said, "Call the police." So I did. I just bought my first car a week earlier and was still in that phase where you double check everything before driving, mirrors, seatbelt, even whether you remembered to bring your wallet. I was on my way to my then girlfriend's house, driving carefully down a narrow residential road lined with terraced houses. That's when one of the doors up ahead suddenly flew open and a kid darted out. I didn't even think. I slammed on the brakes hard enough to make my tires squeal. My car stopped dead in the middle of the road, heart hammering in my chest. The kid, thankfully, wasn't heading into the road at all. He just turned down the pavement and kept walking, blissfully unaware of the heart attack he'd just given me. Unfortunately, my focus on not hitting the kid meant I didn't care what was behind me, and that's how I ended up getting rear-ended. The impact wasn't massive, but it was enough to bend both our bumpers and jolt me forward against my seatbelt. I pulled over, still shaking a little, and got out of the car. That's when I met Entitled Banshee, EB for short. She practically exploded out of her car, late 30s, face bright red, and immediately started screaming, "You could have killed me and my kid." I looked around. No kid, just her. Are you okay?" I asked cautiously. "No, I'm not okay," she shrieked. "You stopped in the middle of the road. You better pay for this damage or I'm calling my husband and he's going to come here and deal with you." I was 18, terrified, and had owned my car for exactly 7 days. But even in my panicked state, I knew the procedure. "We need to exchange details," I said as calmly as I could. "Name, address, insurance." "I'm not giving you a damn thing," she snapped. "You're going to pay me in cash right now for my bumper and my emotional distress." I was done being polite. "Threatening me won't help you. If you don't want to exchange information, I'll just call the police." Apparently, the mere mention of police was like pouring petrol on a fire. She started yelling about how I had attempted to murder her and her imaginary child, how I was a menace to the road, and how she was going to make sure I never drove again. I tuned her out and called the dispatcher. By the time the officers arrived, EB had gone from enraged to crocodile tears. She ran up to them, sobbing about how I had bullied her, scared her, and caused the crash. The officers separated us and got our statements. One officer asked for my license and details, then had me do the standard breathalyzer test. I blew a perfect 0.00. Then I heard the other officer tell EB, "Ma'am, your car shows no MOT on record." In the UK, that's a big deal. MOT is the legally required annual safety test. No MOT means you have no business being on the road. EB immediately started screaming at them, accusing them of lying, demanding to see their sergeant, and yelling about conspiracies. "Ma'am," one of the officers said sternly, "we still need you to complete a breath test. I'm not blowing into that thing. I don't drink. Your machine is wrong." They warned her again, and when she refused, she got herself arrested for failing to provide a sample. And just for good measure, when she tried to yank her arm away, they tacked on resisting arrest. I stood there in stunned silence as they cuffed her, read her rights, and bundled her into the police van. They even had her car towed since she legally couldn't drive it. One of the officers came back over to me afterward, handed me a slip with all her details, and said, "We'll add your info to the report so the insurance company can contact you for the claim." She, however, won't be able to. Her insurance ended up paying for my repairs, plus a little extra for medical since I was sore for days afterward. And a few months later, I got a summons to appear as a witness in court. EB got banned from driving for a full year, slapped with a 500-pound fine for failing to provide a sample and resisting arrest, and had to pay higher insurance premiums when she eventually got her license back. So in the end, her refusal to simply exchange information, which would have been the easiest way to resolve everything, resulted in her losing her license, paying a huge fine, and still having to give me exactly what she refused to in the first place: her name, address, and insurance carrier. My car still runs beautifully to this day. You walked away with a repaired car, some compensation, and the satisfaction of knowing that she had to sit in court and face the consequences of her own meltdown. And our last story: the greed, stupidity, and authority of the CEO. Alex had always believed that the most valuable thing for a company was quality and honesty toward the customer. He wasn't a dreamer, didn't build illusions. He was an engineer, a person who saw the world in details and mechanisms. He was 49 with 20 years at a major Canadian chemical company behind him, dozens of machines he'd invented, hundreds of processes he'd improved. Everyone knew him, from the line worker to the board of directors. Though the shareholders often gnashed their teeth at his stubbornness, in the end they were forced to admit it was thanks to him the company stayed afloat. But life has a strange sense of irony. Alex didn't lose his leg in battle, not in some heroic deed, but during training in an army camp. Simple negligence, a piece of metal in the wrong place, and a young man with dreams of running and hiking was left limping on a prosthesis. Back then, everyone decided that's the end of his career. But they didn't know Alex. He became even more tenacious, more meticulous, more productive. He was the one who invented most of the company's key machines, and most importantly, he always put quality above profit. "If we make something bad today, tomorrow it will kill us," he liked to say. The workers respected him, but the shareholders, they hated him because he ruined short-term profit charts, slowed down quick deals, insisted on testing and safety. Then the day came when the old director retired, a man who had given the company 40 years, who rose from the bottom, who knew every worker by name. He always said, "Alex is our heart and brain." And then he left. In his place, they chose a new CEO, Karina. She stepped onto the stage like a TV host, young, ambitious, in a glittering blazer with a cold smile. "We're starting a new era," she said. "We'll be faster, more agile. We'll conquer the market." In the very first week, she summoned Alex for a talk. "Mr. Alex, you test your machines for too long. We need a launch in 2 months," she said, flipping through papers without even looking him in the eye. "In 2 months?" He adjusted his glasses. "Karina, that's dangerous. We work with reactions where an error means an explosion. If we don't nail the quality, we'll lose not just money, but lives." She finally looked up. "You're stuck in the past. Investors want speed." "Investors want money, and customers want their factories not to explode," he replied evenly. "Your time is over," she said coldly. "My job is profit. Yours is to follow orders." His heart clenched. He understood this was the start of a war. A few weeks later, there was a big meeting. Karina stepped in front of the whole staff and, with pomp, said, "We can't afford to let old engineers dictate our pace of development. Some people have simply fallen behind, and some can't even run forward because they have no legs." The room fell deathly silent. Everyone understood who she meant. Alex sat with his fists clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. He wanted to stand up and shout, but he stayed silent. His gaze was steady, but inside, everything was burning. After the meeting, a young engineer approached him. "Mr. Alex, stay strong. That was awful." "Don't worry," he replied. "Time is always on the side of truth. We'll see who wins." The next morning, he received a letter. "Your contract is terminated. Reason? Lack of fit with corporate culture." He sat in his office looking at the monitors with the machine drawings he'd created himself. His heart ached. He'd given this company 20 years, and now they threw him out like a broken part. For the first weeks, he simply walked around the city, feeling empty. And then he realized he didn't have to do anything. He just had to wait, because all the patents were registered personally to him. The company could use them only while he was employed. A month passed, the first line stopped. 2 weeks later, orders began to crumble. The lawyers spread their hands. Without Alex, the company had no right to use his inventions. Projects died. Clients left. Money evaporated. "What does this mean?" Karina screamed at the next meeting. "It means," the lawyer replied, "that we've lost all the key patents." She turned pale. Meanwhile, Alex was sitting in the competitor's office. They greeted him like a savior. "We've long dreamed of having you work with us," the CEO said. "Your inventions will be with us now." He only nodded, a cold fire shone in his eyes. But he didn't stop there. He filed a lawsuit for wrongful termination. Karina tried to justify herself, but the recordings of her speeches about old people and those who have no legs were played in court. It was discrimination. The trial didn't last long. The company lost. It had to pay him a huge compensation. And inside the company, everything was falling apart. Employees were leaving en masse. Clients turned away. Shareholders tore their hair out. Then the board of directors decided Karina has to go. They forced her to step down. Alex learned about it from the newspaper. He sat on the porch of his new house holding a glass of whiskey and smiling. He'd sold most of the patents to the competitors, received millions, and for the first time in many years, he felt at peace. It all looked terrible. The company to which he had given his life was in decline. But in this catastrophe, there was justice. They betrayed him and paid for it, and he gained his freedom. "I want to be loyal," he thought, watching the sunset, "but sometimes the only way to survive is to take revenge." And for the first time in 20 years, he allowed himself a luxury, to plan nothing for tomorrow. Integrity beats short-term greed, disrespect and discrimination boomerang, while patience and ownership of your work and rights win in the end. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.